Fire sales are often seen in baseball, with teams letting go of many pieces in hopes of creating a better future. The teams that go on fire sales are usually out of contention, but in 1997, the White Sox were a contending team. But Jerry Reinsdorf decided to go on a fire sale of his own, sending fan favorites to new teams in exchange for prospects, and laying the groundwork for teams to copy, angering and dividing fans for different reasons. So let's look at what became known as the White Flag Trade.
Totally sports-esque. Major League.
The groundwork for the fire sale was of course paid by the previous season. In 1996, the White Sox started on fire, winning 40 of their first 61 games, and they were really challenging the reigning AL champions in the Indians, and they looked like a real playoff threat. Their four-man rotation of Alex Fernandez, Kevin Depani, Wilson Alvarez, and James Baldwin was amongst the best in the league. But no matter who the fifth starter was, there was a clear drop-off, and the bullpen was even worse. Outside of Roberto Hernandez and his 38 saves, the bullpen was historically bad at preserving leads. They would blow 33 saves that season, which set the record for the time, later being surpassed by the 2004 Rockies, 2021 Phillies, and the 2022 Nationals. But the team was still hanging around, and fans and players expected help at the deadline. But the only move they would make was trading Luis Anuar for Tony Castillo, and it didn't sit well in the clubhouse. Hernandez and veteran Tony Phillips voiced their frustration to the Sporting News, saying the team never made serious efforts at the deadline. Hernandez admitted the players were starting to believe ownership didn't care about winning, only about filling the seats, something White Sox ownership has in common with about 29 other owners. And with a horrid bullpen, the Sox faded down the stretch, finishing 85-77 and in second place. But the offseason brought a big surprise. Jerry Reinsdorf signed Albert Belle to what was at the time the richest contract in baseball history, at $55 million over the next 5 seasons. Many believed it was Reinsdorf's way of lashing out at other owners for how the '94 strike had been resolved. He even said, "If they're not going to look out for the sport, I'll look out for my team." The White Sox fans didn't care about his motivations, they were just thrilled by what was to come. Belle joining Frank Thomas, Robin Ventura, and Harold Baines in the White Sox lineup, 3 of the franchise's best players, and a division foe who was arguably the most feared hitter in the game at the time. Though there were still problems with the pitching, it looked like the offense could do enough to prevent the bullpen from having a chance to blow the lead, and expectations were sky high. But as they were riding their offseason high, they were brought back down to earth with some bad news on March 21st. In a spring training game against the Red Sox, Robin Ventura slid into home, and his spikes got caught in the mud. His ankle fractured and dislocated, with a bone sticking out of his skin, which caused a woman in the stands to faint. The injury was gruesome and immediate, and General Manager Ron Schuler told reporters that the team would be looking for a replacement, a left-handed bat who could play third base. But for whatever reason, the White Sox did nothing, and the season started much differently than the previous year. By May 3rd, the team was 8-18, and fans were of course disappointed, not so much with the rough start, but with the front office's lack of action. But it is a very long season, and Ventura was working like hell to get back, to salvage something from the season. And amidst his rehab, the White Sox went on 7-game winning streaks in June and July. And on July 24th, in a miraculous comeback, Ventura would return, delivering a game-winning RBI double against Texas, making the 26,000 fans in attendance go crazy, making New Comiskey Park really feel alive for the first time all season. That win put them 2 games over 500 after starting the year 10 games under. And bigger than that, they were just 3.5 games back in the division, in what was going to be the weakest division in the American League. But while that was the case, unbeknownst to everyone but ownership, the next 4 games sealed the team's fate. The White Sox would lose the next 4 games, and that was the final straw for ownership. It started with trading fan favorite and veteran Harold Baines to his then former team, the Baltimore Orioles, for a player to be named later. But as they won the next 2 to pull within 3 games of Cleveland, the real bomb dropped. On July 31st, right before the trade deadline, Reinsdorf called Scott Boras, the agent of Roberto Hernandez, and he wanted to know if there was any chance at an extension. Boras said they need at least 4 years, and it was clear he was going to be traded. The White Sox were no longer giving out long-term deals with pitchers, this coming after Schuler told Roger Clemens he was over the hill when he tried to sign with them, then handing 4 years and $20 million to Jaime Navarro, who was 8-9 with an ERA near 6, and he was a problem in the clubhouse. And with all this, White Sox fans would be shocked when they heard they traded Roberto Hernandez, Wilson Alvarez, and Danny Darwin to the San Francisco Giants for 6 prospects, a trade that became known as the White Flag Trade, obviously fitting the team name in that the trade signaled they were waving the white flag on the season. Fans were naturally outraged, but Reinsdorf believed the return was strong, defending himself by saying, "We were faced with losing Hernandez and Alvarez and getting nothing, as we did with Alex. Now we've added a half dozen talented young players. If the scouts are half right, were in great shape. According to Ron Schuler, the keys to the trade were two young players: shortstop Mike Caruso, who was hitting .333 at Single-A, and right-hander Lorenzo Barcelo, a 7-4 starter at Double-A. In addition, the White Sox received Double-A closer Bob Howry, Single-A lefty Ken Vining, Single-A outfielder Brian Manning, and right-hander Keith Folk. Other than Barcelo, who was signed as an amateur free agent, all these prospects were recent high draft picks, selected in the top 9 rounds between '94 and '96. On paper, the return had potential, but inside the White Sox clubhouse and amongst fans, the mood was grim. For someone like Robin Ventura, the trade was a gut punch. He was asked if a white flag should be flying over the dugout, and he said, any flag will basically mean the same thing. It's just disappointing, I guess, to think you have a team where everybody in here thinks you can still do it, and now you can't. He later added, I didn't know the season ended in August. To the players, they felt like this was surrender amidst what they perceived as a real chance.
I surrender!
Reinsdorf, however, saw it differently. He said, this team had a chance, and it didn't seize it. It was hard to look at this team and feel very confident. I was not interested in finishing second in the poker hand. The trade also divided fans, with some seeing Reinsdorf's vision for the future, getting something instead of losing free agents for nothing. But a majority of fans were upset. There was already a rift between the fans and ownership, with recent threats to move the team, and the disdain that grew with their inability to act after losing Robin Ventura. But even with that 4-game skid, they just got Ventura back, and that excitement that brewed in the offseason when they said they were going for it started to come back, as again, they were still only 3 games back. But they got rid of 3 of their best veteran pitchers, along with Harold Baines, obviously not solving the pitching problems that were already there. And those opinions from fans were further exasperated by the media. Joe Morgan of ESPN would blast the move, calling it a betrayal of the fans. Dave Campbell agreed, asking what kind of example it set across the league. Sports Illustrated's next cover was headlined, Sox Surrender. And when manager Terry Bevington informed his players of the trade, he was laughing. And of course, locally, the Chicago media didn't hold back either. Chicago Tribune columnist Bob Verdi wrote, Jerry Reinsdorf, chairman of the White Owls, committed unpardonable public relations blunder. He will have to live with that infamous burst of candor until he wins a pennant at Comiskey Park 2 or sells the franchise. Probably the latter. And in the end, the Sox finished the 1997 season at 80-81, going 27-28 after the white flag trade. And as the 86-win Cleveland Indians won the division, then the pennant, fans were forever left wondering what would have happened if they went for it. But it was for the long term. And the long term, what became of the players the White Sox got back. Mike Caruso burst onto the scene in '98, hitting .306, stealing 22 bases, and finishing 3rd in Rookie of the Year voting. But he also led the league with 35 errors. In '99, his average dropped to .250, and while he was still tough to strike out, manager Jerry Manuel had concerns about his conditioning, his attitude, and his decisions. By 2000, Caruso was on the bench. The White Sox tried to trade him to Seattle, but he was hurt. And not long after, he was gone. Lorenzo Barcelo's career was hindered by arm injuries, but he did help the team in the year of 2000. Bob Howry, though, gave them a solid return. He led AL rookies with 9 saves in '98 and posted a 3.15 ERA. In '99, he saved 28 games. And the next year, he was a key setup man with a 3.17 ERA. But in 2001, his velocity would drop, and his ERA ballooned. By 2002, he was hit hard in spring training, and he would be traded to Boston. He'd pitch another 9 seasons, often criticizing the White Sox, along with their fans. Well, Keith Folk turned out to be the best piece of the trade. He became the closer, saving 34 games in 2000 and 42 the next year. But in 2002, Jerry Manuel lost faith in him after some blown saves. The Sox then traded him to Oakland for Billy Koch, a move that would backfire. Folk bounced back, and he is most remembered for throwing the last pitch of the 2004 World Series, which would break the curse of the Bambino. As for Ken Vining, he threw 6 innings in 2001 and had an ERA close to 18, while Brian Manning never made the majors. In total, the return had some value, mainly seen in the year 2000 when it all came together, when the Sox won the AL Central, though they would be swept by the Mariners in the ALDS. But not one of the players they acquired ever made an All-Star appearance as a White Sox. Meanwhile, the Giants made the playoffs that year, and though they didn't re-sign Hernandez or Alvarez, and Danny Darwin retired, they did get draft picks when the other 2 signed with Tampa Bay. But most significantly, the buzz around the trade and the team's success helped push through long-stalled plans for a new stadium, eventually leading to Oracle Park. But the real long-term effect of the trade was the precedent it set amongst fans and even players. Former players like Wilson Alvarez and Jack McDowell later confirmed the organization's pattern of disrespect, refusing to negotiate contracts, not even offering deals, and just cutting ties. Alvarez said, They gave up on the team, and that's all anyone will remember. And that's exactly what fans did remember. Attendance dropped from 1.9 million in 97 to 1.4 million by 99. And even the 2000 division title couldn't shake the stigma. White Sox fans didn't trust ownership to finish what they started. And why would they? By 2002, even Paul Konerko was referencing the trade when asked about mid-season expectations, saying, "You are conscious of it because in 1997, they did it when they were less games out." But why the white flag trade wasn't just significant to the White Sox is it led Jerry Reinsdorf to be labeled as someone ahead of his time, and not really in a good way, as these fire sales, especially among small market teams, became much more common in the decades after. And while it sometimes works out, and often makes sense, going on a fire sale is just as big of a bet as going all in. And while the White Sox won the division in 2000, none of the players they got in return became all-stars, and ultimately made impacts on other teams while leaving with a sour taste. But the more damage came from the impact it had on fans. Coming out of the strike, fans were more excited than they had been in years after Albert Belle's huge signing. But after the incompetence of the Robin Ventura situation, as he was making his way back into the lineup, they never really got to see what the team could have been, as they admitted to giving up and showed it by trading away veterans and their top pitchers, leaving a lasting effect that still kinda lingers with fans today, even with the success in the decade after. As Reinsdorf still owns the team and oversaw a division-winning team with young talent, fall to being the worst team in MLB history within a matter of years. And White Sox fans are the only fans that have to deal with this, as these fire sales across the league are just seen as a slap in the face to fans. And it's not very easy to win them back. As though owners think fans can't see them waving a white flag, they definitely can. But they can win them back with a new milkshake and blowing up some disco records. Hopefully you liked this video, and if so, please consider liking and subscribing for new videos every week. Thank you.